There are moments in life when everything shifts in the space between heartbeats, when the air stills, the room tilts, and the people you thought you knew show you who they really are. That moment for me, it cost $18.6 million. That's what the Trion Hotel Group pitch was worth, a potential contract that would have doubled our annual revenue. I'd spent 9 months sculpting that proposal like a cathedral, line by line, image by image. My team and I had reimagined hospitality spaces with modular luxury suites and climate-adaptive design. It was groundbreaking. It was mine. And yet, the morning of the pitch, something felt off. The final files looked right. Crisp layouts, animation previews cued for the boardroom screen. But when the lead architect from Trion, Mr. Dhawan, looked at me like I'd spat in his cappuccino, I knew something had gone horribly wrong. "These are outdated schematics," he said, thumbing through the printed copies. "This version was leaked online 3 days ago." "Leaked?" I choked on the word. "That's impossible. We use encrypted storage. Our security protocol." His brow arched. "Then maybe you'd like to explain this." He slid his phone across the table. My stomach dropped. There, on a glossy blog for design nerds, was the entire Trion proposal, or rather, a version of it. Sloppy, unfinished, with missing annotations and an old logo from 6 months ago. It looked amateur. It looked like I had leaked it for credit. By the time we got back to the office, the whispers had already started. Our CFO had called an emergency board meeting. HR was mysteriously looped in, and Natalie? Well, Natalie was already in the conference room, flipping through a stack of printed emails like she was starring in her own legal drama. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. "I'm just as shocked as everyone else," she began, hands clasped over her chest like a damn debutante. "But I found something troubling." She slid a printout across the glossy oak table. It showed my email address, a thread that appeared to contain forwarded documents, to a personal Gmail. I frowned. It was a doctored screenshot, a bad one at that. The fonts were inconsistent. I opened my laptop to prove it was fake, but Wi-Fi had been cut. My access revoked. "This isn't real," I said. "You all know I wouldn't." "Our client is threatening legal action," said Martin, our general counsel. "They believe this leak cost them exclusivity. They've withdrawn the offer. 18.6 million gone." Natalie's voice dropped into a honeyed tone. "Elena, maybe it's best if you take a leave of absence while we investigate." I laughed. A single, sharp, involuntary laugh. "A leave? Are you serious?" The room didn't laugh with me. Teresa, bless her loyal, anxious heart, sat silently at the end of the table. Her eyes flicked between us, full of something like grief. She knew. Or at least, she suspected. "I built this firm," I said, my voice rising. "I secured our top 5 contracts this year alone. I worked 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, skipped vacations, and we're grateful," Natalie said smoothly, already pulling the knife out of my back. "But right now, the brand needs stability. We'll name an interim CEO while we sort this out." I didn't even get to clear out my office. A security guard escorted me downstairs, past the foyer I designed, the awards wall I curated, the logo I sketched on a napkin 9 years ago in Madrid. The elevator ride felt like a funeral. My own. Outside, the afternoon sun glared like judgment. Cameras waited. Someone had tipped off the press. Elena Street. James fired amid corporate scandal. The headline was already circulating. I didn't cry. Not then. I walked away in heels that pinched and a blazer too stiff for disgrace. My inbox was locked, my calendar erased. But inside? Inside, something far more dangerous than grief was waking up. I wasn't broken. I was angry, and Natalie had just made the worst mistake of her life. There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's surgical. It carves through your pride, dissects your mistakes, and lays bare everything you refuse to see. I lived in that silence for 91 days. No interviews, no public statements. Just me, a suitcase, and the ragged remnants of my reputation. My severance had been clean, $480,000 after taxes. Generous by corporate standards, insulting considering the empire I helped build. But I took it. And instead of wallowing, I boarded a flight to Tokyo, not to escape, to learn. For the first time in over a decade, I had no board meetings, no client dinners, no one breathing down my neck with a fake smile and a hidden knife. What I did have was time and a reason. Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Lisbon, Cape Town. I didn't just travel, I infiltrated. Design firms, creative agencies, boutique consultancies. I observed them all, took notes, studied their failures, their triumphs, their blind spots, especially how they treated women in leadership. Spoiler alert, the patterns were global and depressingly familiar. In Copenhagen, it all changed. The Nordic Design Futures Conference was a sleek, glass-walled affair, packed with visionaries and tech startups trying to save the world with biodegradable concrete and smart mirrors. It was also where I met Maya Chevalier. She was magnetic, French-Tunisian, a former venture capitalist turned architectural savant, dressed in brutalist gray with the confidence of a woman who had made, lost, and remade millions. We sat next to each other during a panel on eco-urbanism. She leaned over, asked if I thought the speaker's metrics were inflated. "They're not just inflated," I whispered back. "They're a hot air balloon with a marketing budget." She laughed. We were inseparable for the rest of the weekend. Over dinner, I told her everything. Not the sanitized version, the real story. Natalie's betrayal, the falsified emails, the board's cowardice, the way I was erased from the company I helped build as if I were a typo in a memo. She didn't offer pity. She offered strategy. "You don't sue her," Maya said, swirling her wine. "You bury her in results." I blinked. "You mean start over?" "No." She leaned in. "You start undercover." Her plan was simple on paper, wicked in execution. We'd form a shell consultancy under a neutral, male-coded name, Iron Crest Strategies. I'd be the ghost behind the curtain. No LinkedIn, no speaking gigs, no paper trail. Maya would handle the front-facing work while I directed design, innovation, and operations. The goal? Acquisition. Small, undervalued design firms with talent but no capital. We'd offer buyouts, mentorship, partnerships. One firm at a time until we had enough leverage to circle back to the company Natalie now ran like a child playing dress-up in her mother's shoes. I didn't hesitate. We registered Iron Crest within a week. Back in the States, the ground was already shifting. Natalie had announced a rebrand of the company, Nouveau North. Aesthetic nonsense. The new logo looked like a rejected tattoo design, and the website had a countdown for an immersive, luxury-first digital experience. Translation: she'd spent at least $750,000 on fluff, but I wouldn't have known any of that if not for Teresa. She reached out the old-fashioned way. A handwritten letter slipped inside a recipe book, mailed to a P.O. box I'd kept active under a pseudonym. Inside was a short message. "Call me. It's worse than you think." I met her in a cafe near Lake Michigan. She looked thinner, tired. Her loyalty hadn't changed, but her nerves were frayed. "She's bleeding the company dry," Teresa said quietly, stirring her coffee like it owed her money. "And not just on branding. She hired a vision consultant for $180,000, bought 2 Peloton bikes for the executive lounge, and there's talk of moving headquarters to Miami. I nearly choked. Miami? We've had a Chicago base for 20 years. Teresa nodded. She says it's to attract bi-coastal synergy, whatever that means. She handed me a flash drive under the table. I've copied non-confidential internal reports, budget sheets, emails. The board's starting to grumble. They're just waiting for someone else to say it first. Say what? That Natalie's in over her head and sinking. I sat back, pulse steady, mind racing. The seed had taken root. The soil was rich with decay, and I had allies, Maya with her fire and reach, Teresa with her access and careful rage. What I'd lost in title, I had regained in freedom. They thought I was gone, but I wasn't done. I was just getting ready. Revenge, when it works, doesn't feel like fire. It feels like cold precision. 3 months after Copenhagen, Iron Crest Strategies acquired its third firm, a boutique interior architecture company in Philadelphia called Sable Line. Their owner, Camilla, had the kind of edge and burnout only true creative talent suffers. All she needed was funding, legal protection, and a team who didn't micromanage her vision. Maya and I gave her that. In return, Sable Line gave us prestige and a firm with clients that overlapped heavily with my old Rolodex. That's when the calls started. Soft inquiries, quiet feelers. Former clients, the real ones, the million-dollar contracts, were growing wary of Nouveau North. They liked the glossy aesthetic but hated the follow-through. Missed deadlines, inflated budgets, an entire hospitality pitch that included a zero privacy glass bathroom concept. I heard one exec say, "It's like Natalie's designing for influencers and not actual human beings." And still, the board held on. Cowards often do. They didn't want to admit they'd been wrong, especially not after firing me so publicly. That's when we escalated. Maya and I launched Phase 2, a quiet, methodical buyout campaign. We identified 4 struggling design firms in the Midwest, all mid-sized, all overlooked, all bleeding cash. We acquired them within 60 days, all under shell companies tied to Iron Crest but scrubbed of my name. We took on their staff, paid off their debts, and rebuilt their portfolios from the ground up. By quarter 3, Iron Crest, this nameless shadow of me, was pulling in $12.3 million in projected revenue. And Nouveau North? They had just missed payroll for the second time. It was Teresa who gave me the signal. She sent a photo of the office kitchen, empty coffee shelves, half the lights off, and a whiteboard with the phrase, "Innovate to Elevate," hastily scrawled under a list of delayed payments. Her caption was short, "It's time." We made our move. Iron Crest extended an anonymous acquisition offer to Nouveau North, delivered by a third-party firm specializing in corporate transitions. It wasn't hostile, not overtly, just inevitable. Natalie panicked. She went on LinkedIn posting hollow reassurances, hosted a webinar called Leading Through Chaos, where she wore a $3,000 blazer and smiled through clenched teeth while her company hemorrhaged staff. At one point, I watched the live stream and saw her misquote one of my old strategy notes, word for word. The board, finally, blinked. Desperate, they agreed to the acquisition, under the condition that new leadership would be installed to stabilize investor confidence. In public, they spun it as a merger. Internally, they knew the truth. The day of the reveal, I arrived early. Teresa greeted me with her eyes shining, but not a word spoken. She just handed me my old badge, still intact, still labeled Chief Creative Officer. I entered the building through the front doors. No side entrance, no disguise, no apology. I walked into the executive boardroom and sat at the head of the table, the same spot Natalie once stood in when she smugly announced my departure. The irony wasn't lost on me. Natalie stormed in 15 minutes late, cell phone in one hand, a caramel latte in the other, fake smile already plastered across her face. Sorry, traffic was... Then she saw me. The smile died, slowly, like a candle starving of oxygen. She blinked once, twice, then laughed. Oh, this is cute. Are you consulting for the buyers or... No, I said, standing calmly. I am the buyer. A beat of silence. Then the chair of the board, Wallace Kingsley, the same man who refused to look me in the eye the day I was escorted out, cleared his throat and said, Natalie, please sit. She didn't. This is a joke. She was fired. She leaked files. Your evidence was fabricated, I said. The forensic audit proved it. Teresa, God bless her, slid a folder across the table. Inside were 3 pages, timestamps, IP logs, and digital signatures, enough to bury Natalie in a civil suit. You forged internal emails to frame me, I said, voice steady. And now you've spent close to $2.6 million on branding exercises that alienated legacy clients, laid off 2/3 of the strategy department, and tanked quarterly growth. The company's market value dropped by 38%. She looked at the board. You're going to believe her over me. No one answered. Not even Wallace. I walked toward her slowly, not triumphantly, just with purpose. I handed her a sealed envelope. That's your new contract, I said. You'll be completing a 6-month training rotation before being considered for any future leadership roles. She tore the envelope open. Read. Laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. Just fury. You want me to be an intern? An apprentice, I corrected. Officially. I'll sue. You can try, but you signed a severance clause requiring active cooperation in all post-transition operations if you wanted to retain your executive exit package. If you walk out now, you leave with nothing, not even a recommendation. Natalie looked around the room again, but no one moved. No one defended her. Not after what she'd done. Not after the numbers. Not after the lies. I turned to Teresa. Have someone prepare her onboarding. Teresa gave the slightest of smirks. Already did. And just like that, I sat back down, not in exile, not in bitterness, but in command. Natalie stood frozen for another second. Then, with the grace of a dethroned queen, she turned and walked out the door, but not far. She'd be back tomorrow, wearing a name tag, carrying someone else's coffee, and learning finally what it meant to earn everything. Power, when wielded right, doesn't roar. It recalibrates the air. The first day of my official return, I came in early, not to stake my claim, but to walk through the building slowly. I touched the walls I'd once helped choose paint colors for, peeked into meeting rooms I used to host strategy sessions in. I passed the old design studio where the original Savoy Hotel sketches were born, the project that earned the firm its first $5 million retainer. Everything looked the same, and yet sterile, shallow. Natalie had replaced the art with generic prints that screamed corporate beige. The staff? Quiet. Professional, but subdued, like they were all waiting for the next swing of the axe. I called an all-hands meeting on the 3rd floor. Everyone showed up, though some stood in the back like they expected a firing line. Good morning, I said, voice calm. This isn't about revenge. It's about resurrection. I laid it out with no flourish. We'd be eliminating useless vanity projects, scaling back influencer partnerships, and investing in training, mentorship, and actual creative work. I announced the reinstatement of the Innovation Incubator program, the one Natalie cut in favor of a corporate retreat to Aspen. Each employee would receive a $2,000 creativity stipend per quarter to pursue learning or exploration. Staff-wide profit sharing would return. The room didn't cheer. It exhaled. And then I added, "We'll be undergoing a full internal audit of systems, culture, and leadership integrity. Starting today." That's when Natalie entered. Her heels echoed across the floor like a warning shot. She wore a white silk blouse and a look she'd trademarked, performative professionalism layered over quiet rage. She stood in the doorway like she expected me to flinch. I didn't. She spoke directly to the board member in the corner. "I won't be participating in this charade. I'm done." "Of course," I said smoothly. "You're free to leave and forfeit your $1.2 million severance package. Legal already confirmed." That stopped her cold. Even her wristwatch seemed to hesitate. Wallace, ever the opportunist, cleared his throat. "The board stands by the contractual stipulations. 6 months, rotational training, full participation." Natalie looked at the room, her former kingdom, and saw no support. Not anymore. So she stayed. Week 1. Natalie shadowed Teresa in operations. The same Teresa she used to bark orders at, ignore in meetings, and refer to as just admin. Now, she was color-coding calendar invites and booking vendor calls while Teresa ran circles around her. Week 2. She was assigned to the design studio under Miguel, a junior creative she once dismissed as too Gen Z to lead. He handed her mock-ups to review, coffee runs to complete, and a sketching task with a 48-hour deadline. Her first submission? Sloppy, derivative. Miguel returned it without comment, just a sticky note. "Try again. This isn't Pinterest." She burned, and I watched. Not with cruelty, but clarity. I wasn't just rebuilding a company, I was unearthing its soul. For years, Natalie had hollowed it out from the inside, replacing vision with vanity, partnership with hierarchy. I reinstated the mentorship pipeline, rehired 2 of our best minds she had laid off during the brand simplification debacle. We courted 3 new clients, not because of my name, but because our work started speaking again. One day, I passed Natalie in the elevator. She was carrying presentation boards, her blouse stained with ink, her eyes tired in a way I recognized, not from work, but from irrelevance. I nodded. She didn't look up. The press caught wind of the changes. Forbes ran a piece titled, "The Quiet Return of Elena Moreno, from Ousted Creative to CEO of the Year." I didn't do interviews. I let results speak. By quarter 2, revenue projections surged by 28%, our client retention rate hit a company high, and morale, tracked via internal survey, climbed from 41% to 89%. But beneath the triumph, there was silence between Natalie and me. I didn't seek confrontation. I didn't owe her drama. But that didn't mean I forgot. Every week, I passed her in hallways, carrying papers, sitting quietly in team briefings, watching a world she thought she owned move on without her. One afternoon, I walked into the copy room and found her standing motionless, holding a stack of printed reports. She turned to me. "You're enjoying this," she said, voice low, watching me crawl. I met her gaze, unblinking. "I'm watching you work." She scoffed. "This is beneath me." I leaned against the door frame, folding my arms. "It's beneath who you were, not who you are now." Silence. Then I added, "If you ever want to rise again, anywhere, you'll need to understand how to build from the bottom." I walked away. No flourish, no final word, just truth, because that's what the shift was about. Not just restoring what Natalie ruined, but proving that power isn't in the title. It's in the impact. And Natalie, finally, was learning. The hard way. The day had finally come. 6 months, nearly to the hour. Natalie had completed her rotation, if you could call it that without smirking. She'd filed mock invoices, stapled presentation packets, and even fetched lunch during the quarterly creative review. Never once did she apologize. But then, people like Natalie don't traffic in apologies. They traffic in silence, avoidance, and tightly clenched teeth. Still, there's a difference between humiliation and humility. The former is inflicted, the latter earned. I had hoped she might learn the difference. She arrived at my office on time. No blazer, hair pulled back. Her once perfect manicure now chipped. She looked, for the first time in years, real. "Sit," I said softly, not unkindly. She did. "I'm not going to draw this out," I continued. "You've completed the 6-month rotation. You're entitled to walk away. Clean slate, severance in full, no lawsuits, no headlines." She looked down. "And if I stay?" I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a formal offer letter. "Creative assistant," I said. "Under Teresa's leadership." She blinked. "You're joking." "No," I said calmly. "Teresa runs strategy and operational development now. She's earned it. And frankly, so have you. The hard way. If you want to keep growing, there's space for you. But not above anyone. Not anymore." She stared at the envelope like it might explode. "No special privileges, no shortcuts," I added. "You'll sit in meetings and listen. You'll research, pitch, revise. You'll earn trust, if that's even what you're after." Natalie's jaw tensed. Her pride thrashed behind her eyes, fighting to speak, but it lost. "I'll stay," she said finally, almost choking on the words. I nodded, without gloating. Then we begin again. I stood, ready to leave. There was a pitch in Paris waiting, a major partnership with a sustainability-driven luxury chain, one of the biggest in our company's history. Maya was already en route. The jet was fueled. The future was unfolding, and it no longer bent around Natalie's ambition. Before she left, Teresa stepped in, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other. She handed Natalie a small black notebook. No words, just a soft smile and the handoff. Natalie looked down at the title embossed in gold. How to build, not backstab. There was a beat of silence. Teresa turned, leaving the room with the same quiet dignity she'd always carried. The door clicked shut behind her. Natalie looked at me, eyes sharp. "Did you write this?" I smirked. Number she did, and with that, I walked away, out of the office, out of the past, and into the future that I'd built, not stolen. Because here's the truth. Revenge is fleeting. Power fades. But integrity, that stays. And now, so would I. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, redemption, and quiet power, don't forget to hit that like button. Leave a comment below and tell us what you would have done if you were Elena. And if you love stories about real transformation and family drama with a twist, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for listening. Until next time, build, don't backstab.